The Trinity of Fundamentals, Chapter 1. Relentless blows on the door to the safe house, thunderous banging that shatters a beautiful and serene summer night, the harbingers of what could be a drastic transformation of his life. Is this how his latest birthday was to be celebrated, with smashing steel-toe military boots and rifle butts? What sort of life do these vigorous announcements foretell? One born only to be extinguished. Will the anniversary of his birth, that celebration of beginnings, spell his life's end as well? They were pounding on the door like celebrants of some primitive pagan ritual, like members of a cannibalistic tribe, engaged in a debauched, mad dance to the accompaniment of mindless screams and shrieks that tear apart the stillness of the jungle. Amidst the beating of drums, they announced a thirst and hunger to tear apart flesh and to devour their prey. That was how Canaan imagined them on that August night, as he crouched motionless in his secret den next to Hisham. It was midnight when the soldiers began their attempt to break in. The quick succession of fierce blows disturbed the hush of the large, sparse house and the surrounding industrial neighborhood. Silence had prevailed there, save for the barking of dogs at the nearby barley mill. The dogs fell mute when the ritual began, petrified by those evening poltergeists who had drowned out the yelps with their clamor. As the pounding intruded, the monotonies of his secret life faded away. In their desire to breach his den, which had eluded their intelligence services for years, the intruders were akin to lecherous men assaulting a virgin, seeking to violate her horrifically. The soldier's blows would derail the life he had become accustomed to. What was to come? What would forge the course of the strange and exceptional life ahead? Would it be the habits of his old life, accumulated from the hours, the days, the years he had spent evading the soldier's grip? They had their customs and he had his own. He had spent year after year living just beyond their clutches. Throughout that time, he had built the schedule of his days. He owned those days. He pressed their hours into the service of a revolutionary enterprise. That secret life became his profession, until eventually it was the womb which birthed all of his experiences, an amniotic of searing hardships and revolutionary action. The blows had grown very loud. Their echoes bounced off the walls, the doors of his house, his chairs and books, his papers and pens, his loaf of bread and glass of water, his red prayer beads and his cigarettes. They reverberated through the past 9 years of his life. The sounds flitted down the streets and neighborhoods of Ramallah, the houses and alleys of the city which had embraced him and held him close to its chest. Ramallah, where he had sought refuge and disappeared from the gaze of its occupiers. The echoes fell on his head like the blows of a hammer, shaking every one of his brain cells, calling for mobilization and action, as though yelling to say, "Act quickly, Canaan, the unthinkable has happened. The blows this time are different than 2 years ago when the soldiers grew tired of knocking and left. This is the dawn of a new era, Canaan, a confrontation which represents a different sort of challenge from what you have grown accustomed to for many years now. This is a battle you must win. Nothing but victory will do. Nothing short of victory." A new era and a new confrontation, a juncture which turned the last page on the past. Nevertheless, each line on each page of his diary was emblazoned onto his memory, recorded as if on a cinematic reel of film. The turning points in a man's life cannot obliterate the past, no matter how long ago it all began. The past is deeply etched in memory. It refuses to leave, and the mind recalls its events whenever it wishes. A first love is a turning point. Does a lover forget how it began? Does he forget his first stammering words, the trembling of his hand when it touched hers, his confusion as where to put his nose when he kissed her for the first time? Enlisting in a clandestine party is another turning point. Does one forget the first words of the man who introduced him to the life of struggle and the path of secrecy, where they were walking or where they were sitting when the conversation began? Does one forget the first secret meeting, the first communique he distributed like a fugitive, or the first operation he was assigned to carry out? The birth of a first child is a turning point for the mother. Does she forget the pangs of labor and the pain of childbirth? Does she forget the moment she first saw the tearful eyes of her baby, the small cherubic mouth suckling on her breast which she offered to him for his first feeding? December 1982 marked one such great transformation in Kenan's life. On a cold and lonely dark night at 8 o'clock in the evening, he received a warning. Your man has been arrested and may confess. Do not spend the night in your house. Fend for yourself until we can make out where things are headed. A cloak of mourning hung over the house. Death had visited the family a week earlier, snatching away his father and leaving in its wake not only sorrow but also new family obligations dropped on Kenan's shoulders by fate, and a hope kindled in his mother's heart that he would step into the shoes of his departed father. It seems as though calamites come in multitudes, Kenan said upon receiving the news. He sensed dark days lay ahead. Dark days? No, more like dark years. After that cold, lonely December night, your family home will no longer be open to you. You may no longer step across its threshold. You will leave and never return. Things have taken a turn for the worst. Your name had not been known to them, but now it has been revealed. Not just your name, but your party position, the missions you carried out, the identities of those you contacted. You could not have divined what lay beyond the horizon, no matter how gifted you were at discerning the future. As soon as he received the warning, he left the house, determined not to frequent it at all for fear that he may fall into their hands. He knew many students with houses around the university and in the two cities, one night with one student acquaintance and the next night with another, constantly on the move. Slinging his leather satchel on his shoulder, he carried around his books as well as his nightwear and extra packets of cigarettes. They were a precaution against the unforeseen in the event that he could not get around the checkpoints set up by the soldiers or make detours to avoid the occupation's army patrols. He continued to go to the university in spite of it all. In December of each year, the university would turn into a beehive of activity. Tensions ran high as the annual elections were held for the student union. They coincided with the anniversary of the founding of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, PFLP, as well as preparations for the commemoration of the revolution and the launching of the Fatah movement. Consequently, classrooms appeared almost empty. Everyone was busy either participating in union or syndicate politics or engaging in endless debates, which grew louder day by day, or listening to and observing what was going on around them. Kenan did not openly participate in the preparations for the December activities. Instructions from the party were to keep a low profile, and his party affiliation remained unknown to many. The reality was that Kenan and his comrades were deeply involved in the decision-making and implementation of various activities, whether in regard to preparing for the anniversary celebrations of the party's founding or commemorating the launching of the revolution and the Fatah movement. This was why he was rarely able to meet up with Muna on campus those days. But they would find a few minutes here and there to spend together over lunch or a quick cup of tea at the university canteen, which, at times, buzzed with large numbers of students, far exceeding its capacity. The students argued and clamored as though the scene was a vegetable market or a hornet's nest. The circles of debaters were transformed into something resembling pyramids. The circle would start with 2 students, and then a few more would join in, and then they would begin climbing on tables and chairs, and one head would tower over all of the other heads, and so on. At this stage of the squabble, it was difficult to see the debaters or make out who was speaking or what they were even saying. Muna would get annoyed whenever she saw Kenan weighed down with the concerns and worries of the season. his clothes rumpled, his eyes red from the lack of sleep, fuzz covering his unshaven cheeks and his stumbling gait revealing his fatigue. "What a sight you are! If only you could see yourself in a mirror. Your clothes, the stubble on your cheeks, the bags under your eyes. It's like you've climbed out of a grave. Go get some sleep, change your clothes, shave." As you know, we're in the middle of the elections, the anniversary commemorations, and on top of everything, an attack on the party and a comrade under interrogation. Who knows if he'll crack? "I don't think he will break down and implicate you in his confession," she said firmly, without any basis. That was wishful thinking. He looked at her tenderly, his lips forming a tired, satirical smile. His beloved was expressing her hopes and wishes. A week after Canaan left his family's home, the occupiers mounted a surprise attack on a house adjacent to the one he was staying at with some students. The minute he heard the commotion across the street, he thought he was under surveillance, that they knew his location and were searching the houses in the area looking for him. Without hesitating, he quickly opened the door and scaled the wall around the house. He jumped and took off, running between the houses near the edge of the Quadura camp, heading for his family's home. He wanted to know if they had raided it. Hiding at a safe distance, he watched the house from under the cover of some trees. At midnight, he knocked at his mother's bedroom window. "Has anything happened?" His mother rose from her bed, disturbed and breathing hard, not having fallen asleep yet. How was she to sleep, having learned from Canaan that the house could be raided by those looking for him? Ever since Canaan embarked upon the political path and the occupation's boots trod over the floor of their home, her ears had become attuned to military trucks driving by, and she told him so many times. The sounds made her uneasy, and since the family house lay on the route regularly taken by the occupation, there was no end to her disquiet. Come in, it's cold outside. I will put the teapot on the fire. Where are you roaming to at this time of the night?" They did not come. "Come in!" She too was engaging in wishful thinking. At any rate, if they were to come, they would have already come before midnight, he thought to himself. He made up his mind and shuffled in through the kitchen door. He was led by his nostalgia for sleep and a cup of tea. The self savors peace and quiet, but the revolutionary who allows himself to be led by its wishes is sometimes led to his death. 1:30 midnight, as he sat drinking tea with his mother and brother, his eyes kept drifting toward the street nervously. Suddenly, he caught sight of soldiers heading towards the house. He quickly recognized an intelligence officer leading the group of soldiers. Vaulting towards the kitchen door as though stung, Canaan whispered in order to his mother, "Don't leave the third cup on the windowsill." Sneaking out the door, he ran towards the wall surrounding the house. As he climbed over, he looked back to see the soldiers surrounding his home before forcing their way in. He ran across the neighbor's vegetable garden and up the frosted hill overlooking his house, then climbed a tree and crouched down, watching the house. After 2 hours of sitting like a monkey in the tree, he was sure that they had left. He climbed down and walked towards his home, then tapped on the window pane again. The only reason he had returned to the house was to say goodbye to his mother and to find out what the soldiers had done. Did they mistreat his mother, brother, and family? Did they search the house? What had they said? All of these details could prove useful. Canaan started questioning his mother as soon as he entered the darkened house. What did they do? His mother was agitated, though she had not been moved by their deceptive assurances. They did not stay long, and they did not search. They asked about you and said they wanted you for 5 minutes, no more, just to ask him a few questions and he can go back home. Canaan smiled, communicating his understanding, and his mother nodded as though to say she, too, understood. I told you time and time again, Canaan, the political path is difficult, but you did not listen. Go ahead, tell me what you are going to do now. I have to go now. He tossed this grenade of a sentence in his mother's face with no warning or time for explanation. I told him that you were studying late in the library and would probably spend the night there. Tomorrow morning, go turn yourself in and may God protect you. She said this as though she had not heard and did not wish to hear what he had said. Later, when things quiet down, I'll send for you. For now, I'm not turning myself in. There was no convincing her. She argued in a troubled voice, shifting between scolding and pleading. He was pained by her state and by his own at the same time. The tension grew, though neither was successful in convincing the other. They ignored each other's words as though they were addressed to someone else. Let me leave with my mind at ease. Don't be mad. It will be a hard burden to bear if I were to leave while you're angry. By embracing and kissing her, struggling to fight back the tears welling up in his eyes. She kissed him, trembling from a mixture of fear and tenderness. She insisted on giving him money, but he refused. She settled the matter in her usual way by shoving the money into the pocket of his winter overcoat. He turned and walked towards the back door. As he opened it, Canaan suddenly heard her voice behind him. May God be pleased with you. He left to face his new life, bearing with him his mother's prayer. A week later, Canaan received a letter from the party, which he had read with extreme care, line by line, word by word. It was not an ordinary letter by any standard. The party organization in the region was in the midst of a struggle with the occupiers. The letter smelled of clashes and conflict. It contained an assessment of the intelligence service's aggressive campaign on the organization, with references concerning the importance of each and every comrade staying on top of their responsibilities and not allowing the occupation authorities to stymie their efforts. It stressed the dire need for professionals who will grant the party not just the hours in their days, but perhaps their very lives. The letter concluded with the following official message. It has been decided that you will not turn yourself in. Rather, you shall go into hiding and lead a secret existence, adopting the measures, precautions, requirements, and rules of conduct which must be followed to the letter. To begin with, do not receive any visitors, and do not visit anyone. The importance of a comrade, every comrade, being on top of their responsibilities. Canaan knew the party's experiences in the homeland were informing this important security decision. The occupiers' attacks on party organizers and the imprisonment of its leaders prevented party members from amassing experience. As the letter also said, protecting the accumulation of experience through the preservation of cadres and foundational pillars is now the first line of defense for an increasingly effective and more stable party structure. During 1980 and 81, the party justifiably adopted the slogan of solving the institutional problem as a pragmatic decision. It alerted its members to the necessity of building party organizations which, after they became firmly established, could serve as a basis on which all branches of party activity, especially the popular, political, informational, and combative branches, could be centralized. What was achieved at the beginning of the 1980s was meager but nevertheless promising. The activities of the dispersed nuclei of the party, consisting of university students, intellectuals, and some workers, began to be organized under a somewhat unified resolution, even if they were not yet within an integrated party network. In this way, the party in the homeland was like a toddler on all fours, learning to walk upright. The party paper was being published, albeit haphazardly, and focused on directing and discussing organizational policy. One could see the buds of the student and women's unions sprouting in the universities, institutions, and cities, while party activities among the large arena of rural workers were still in their infancy. These union organizations had begun to replace committees of volunteers which, since the mid-1970s, had been one of the only channels for recruiting, politicizing, and mobilizing activists towards party activities. The party worked with these union organizations, seeing them as instruments for expanding among the masses without any serious focus on their syndical programs and tasks. The pursuit of that goal, a unified party organization in the homeland with a constructive outlook and with popular, political, and media branches engaged in resistance activities, was a multi-pronged effort. It required the party to prevent the disruption of the accumulation of institutionalized knowledge, which would occur as a result of the arrests of party members. It also imposed upon the party the need to grow the professional cadres and leaders who would be dedicated exclusively to dealing with the party's problems and the struggle. Indeed, there can be no revolutionary party without a professional team. There was a firm conviction that the party would be built, not by amateurs, but by professionals who would collectively shoulder the responsibility of coping with the problems facing the revolution from beginning to end.